There's this thinker named Shahid Bolson who said something a while back that stuck with me and is relevant now more than ever. He said, in America, even our resistance is designed by the system, pre-approved, contained, controlled. The powerful have figured out ways to let us fight back in ways that don't actually threaten them. Don't that make you mad? And honestly, look around. He's right. We're playing inside their sandbox. They've built a system where even revolution is a product that you can live stream and hashtag. It feels good, but it changes nothing. Meanwhile, the other side isn't losing any sleep over making our lives more and more uncomfortable and harder every day. Higher prices, weaker rights, deeper divides, while we keep fighting back in ways to keep them comfortable, convenient, safe, and rule-following. Don't that make you mad?
America, the land of opportunity, right? Think about this. The best and greatest country in the world, liberty, freedom, prosperity, on and on and on. But look at you. It's the land of milk and honey, but everyone is always trying to find a side hustle. Everyone is endlessly talking about being on their grind. Motivational speakers are a billion-dollar industry. Life coaches, self-help books. Social media is full of inspirational quotes, so-called, for supposedly people who are living in the best country in the world. While you look like, to everyone else, you look like you're constantly on the verge of a nervous breakdown. You look like you're barely holding it together. Like you need someone to pump you up just to help you get out of bed in the morning. How great can it really be? You flood social media with that stuff. All that you can do it. You will survive this posts. You're beautiful. You're important. You're special. You're a champion. All of that. You flood social media with those things. And everyone in the world sees it. And it looks to them like America is staring in the bathroom mirror trying to pull themselves together to face the day. That's what it looks like. It looks very sad to people outside. People in countries that don't proclaim to be the greatest and most wonderful nation on earth, well, they don't have to hype themselves up just to do normal things. They don't have to hype themselves up just to function in the world. People in Africa, Asia, the Middle East, Latin America, so-called, they don't need motivational speakers. They don't need life coaches. They don't need inspirational Instagram quotes just to be able to stop crying in the office parking lot and go to work. Honestly, it always looks like it's a toss-up with you, whether you're going to post an inspirational, motivational quote on social media or jump off the roof. You know, to the rest of the world, if you can think of a people who were more held back, more deprived, more sabotaged than African Americans. You took everything away from them and took them away from everything. They started in your country at less than zero, literally regarded and treated as subhuman, not allowed to learn to read or write or anything for hundreds of years. But you see, they come from a people of accomplishment to one degree or another, not a people of piracy and theft and appropriation. They come from a people who created and built and developed in their own land. And even though you did everything that you could possibly do to suppress them, to hold them down, to hold them back, and you're still doing that until today, nevertheless, I don't think anyone can dispute the fact that African Americans have become a global cultural superpower.
Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Beauty. If today is your first time coming across my channel, you are welcome. And to the people who has been supporting this channel by subscribing and sharing my videos, I do appreciate all of you. So today I want to talk about this very Arab man and his teaching. According to him, he said America is being replaced today by the elites around the world. And you and I knows that America has always been the paramount of the world. America has always been the chief of civilization. But right now, America is crumbling and being replaced by other societies. Anyway, let's dive into these videos and we will come back to discuss more about this. Subscribe to this channel for more quality content like this. Comment your thoughts in the comment section and we'll be right back.
Culturally, they're a superpower. Whatever cultural soft power that America has in the global South, it's African American. I mean, the point is American isolation. That's what's happening. And that's what will happen. You know, I keep explaining that this is the direction. And it's a direction that has no U-turn. It has no detour. It has no turns at all. It's an irreversible direction, you know. Look, I understand why people simplify things, you know, by thinking that the OCGFC is like some organized cabal. It's not, but I completely understand why it makes it easier to think of them that way. I mean, it might be helpful for understanding in some ways, even though it's not an accurate way of looking at how the highest tiers of the economic, political, and financial hierarchy work. It's not really a cabal, but like, if you think of it as a cabal, you can imagine an OCGFC white paper or a memo about what their plans are, you know, confidential for super rich eyes only or something like that. I mean, you have think tanks, you have organizations like the World Economic Forum and so on. More or less, that's what they do. They're not generally coming up with ideas and strategies or anything like that. They just articulate or translate into the language of policy proposals what the OCGFC already intend to do. think tanks are basically PR firms for the political class. Like I was saying the other day, if you were someone from the OCGFC, the A National OCGFC, and you made an evaluation of America and the global landscape, say 10 years ago in 2015, well, we can imagine what that would look like and what responses you would probably recommend if you were from that group. It's not that hard, really. You know, you'd be sitting in a boardroom looking at macro trends, political forecasts, demographic data, capital returns, and of course, the viability of maintaining control, of sustaining dominance without destabilizing your own structures. You know, you'd want to extract, you want to continue growing, but not at the expense of triggering systemic collapse that you can't contain. So you'd analyze America, you know, the heart of your power for decades, and you'd start preparing plans because the situation, the real situation, has changed significantly from the early days. So if you're someone from the A National OCGFC, the owners and controllers of global financialized capital, and you made an evaluation of America and the global landscape from around 2015, you'd have some very stark conclusions. The trends were all there. The writing was on the wall. And if your goal is uninterrupted profit extraction, geopolitical control, and long-term systemic stability for capital, well, America just didn't look like a good bet anymore. We can go point by point. You have demographic decline. You know, you'd see declining birth rates in the U.S. Total fertility rate was already below replacement level by 2015, sitting at around 1.8% and dropping. By 2023, 2 years ago, it hit 1.62%, according to the CDC. That's below replacement level of 2.1. Well, that means in the future, shrinking labor force, increased aging population, higher dependency ratios, and so on. More strain on social services, less domestic consumption over time, on and on. Compare that to India or to Nigeria or to the broader sub-Saharan region. Nigeria's population is expected to double by 2050. India already overtook China as the most populous country in 2023. The center of gravity is shifting. Then you have other issues, like the OCGFC would have looked at Ferguson in 2014, Baltimore in 2015, seen the rise of Black Lives Matter, not because they care about racism or police violence, not at all, but because civil unrest is bad for business. Then, of course, Trump happened, 2016. Half the country was radicalized, the other half was traumatized. Social cohesion was fraying. Trust in institutions was plummeting. In 2021, the trust barometer showed that trust in the media and the government had collapsed. The Capitol was stormed, right? So-called insurrection. This is not a good environment for capital. You have political dysfunction, you have gridlock, you have polarization, institutional paralysis. The 2010s showed that the U.S. couldn't even pass basic legislation. Infrastructure fell into disrepair. According to the American Society of Civil Engineers, the U.S. had a C- rating in infrastructure in 2021. Meanwhile, China's Belt and Road Initiative was transforming Eurasia and transforming Africa. Deindustrialization between 2000 and 2015, the U.S. lost 5 million manufacturing jobs. Whole towns were hollowed out. The OCGFC had already offshored production for profit. And by 2015, America was becoming too expensive, too politically unstable, too socially chaotic to remain as a global manufacturing hub, or even as a reliable research and development center in the long run. Silicon Valley had become dominated by monopolies: Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft. Innovation was consolidating into platform control, not expansion. Growth in users had plateaued. The next billion internet users weren't in San Francisco, they were in Lagos, in Jakarta, in New Delhi. And then, of course, you have America's educational decline. A 2015 Pew study ranked the U.S. 38th out of 71 countries in math and 24th in science. Student debt exploded to 1.6 trillion by the 2020s. STEM graduates were fewer compared to China and India. By 2022, China was producing over 1.4 million STEM graduates annually. The U.S. was less than 800,000. Not to mention, you have the U.S. military budget that in 2015 was 600 billion, and yet it couldn't even decisively win in Afghanistan or in Iraq. These wars were not producing capital returns. They were bleeding the treasury. The OCGFC doesn't fund loss-making ventures unless there's a strategic payoff, and even then, they want an exit strategy. And already by 2015, you saw a rise in multipolarity. Russia was asserting itself, China was asserting itself and rising. India was asserting autonomy. South-South trade already grew to 25% of global trade by 2015 and continued rising. The U.S. was no longer the center of the world, even 10 years ago. The BRICS bloc, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, in 2015 wasn't yet economically integrated, but the foundations were there. And post 2022, after the Ukraine war and the sanctions against Russia, it really kicked into gear. Countries began trading in local currencies. De-dollarization began. Even Saudi Arabia and the UAE joined BRICS Plus in 2024. These weren't just symbols. This represents a structural realignment. And in 2015, global digital infrastructure outside the U.S., Facebook and Google started losing market share in key markets. Africa's fintech sector exploded. Kenya became a cashless society. Amazon Web Services and Microsoft began building data centers in Nigeria and in Kenya and in South Africa. In 2023, Microsoft pledged over $1 billion to build AI infrastructure in Kenya and in East Africa. Understand, these are not experiments on their part. These are exits. So what would the OCGFC, the A National OCGFC, conclude in 2015? America is unstable, it's old, it's expensive, it's divided, and it's in decline, while the Global South is young, cheap, fast-growing, underdeveloped, and full of opportunity. So let's just start the great decoupling, and so they did. First, they inflated asset prices, stocks, crypto, real estate, causing a massive speculative boom through ultra-low interest rates, and then that money was used to invest abroad. And then when COVID-19 came, it just accelerated it. Lockdowns crushed small businesses, and Amazon, Walmart, and big tech consolidated the economy. Remote work normalized the outsourcing of white-collar labor. Venture capital flooded into India and Africa. Between 2021 and 2023, venture capital investments in India crossed $30 billion. Microsoft announced a $2.1 billion data center expansion in Japan in 2024. Google built its first cloud region in Africa in 2022. And then came Ukraine. The U.S. weaponized the dollar, froze Russian reserves, cut them from SWIFT. That told the world your money isn't safe if you defy us. And the response? Well, countries started trading in yuan, in rupees, in dirhams. BRICS formed a common payment system. By 2024, BRICS Plus included Saudi Arabia, Iran, and the UAE. Global South nations began financing their own trade. The dollar's dominance dropped from 73% of global reserves in 2001 to under 58% in 2023, and it's falling. So yeah, if you were from the OCGFC back in 2015, this is all predictable. America is being phased out, not because they hate America, but because America is obsolete. It no longer has a utilitarian purpose. And the worst part, most Americans still think that they're the center of the world. But in the boardrooms of the real rulers, the future is being built elsewhere, and it's not red, white, and blue. Any economist or any planner would have been sitting in a strategy room with analysts, looking again at economic data, at demographic projections, and so on. You look at the United States and say, well, this platform is reaching the end of its utility. The cost of maintaining hegemony through this particular nation state are starting to outweigh the benefits. It's aging, it's divided, it's expensive to manage, it's politically becoming unstable. So if you're part of the OCGFC, what do? You don't outright destroy the U.S., but you phase it out. You extract what's left, you wind it down. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's economic logic. The U.S. had served as the central hub of capital expansion for decades, but by 2015, it had already passed its peak utility. The OCGFC began transitioning towards new centers of gravity, young populations, deregulated markets, resource-rich regions, primarily in the Global South. So you gradually want to move R&D and manufacturing out of the U.S., and that's what we've seen. Not only low-skilled labor, but also high-end production, innovation hubs. Investments have been relocating. I don't know if you know, tech, R&D, pharmaceuticals, chip production, even advanced robotics, gradually shifting out to Asia, to India, to various pockets in Africa, where you can build without oversight. At the same time, you've got to keep the U.S. population passive while you're doing this. That's where you need fragmentation, cultural division, political polarization, racial antagonism. You pump identity politics to the front of the national conversation. So people fight each other instead of paying attention to who's asset stripping the country. And then you get a gift. They got a gift, a perfect gift. Like I said, COVID-19. I'm not saying that the OCGFC created the virus. I'm saying that they did, though, instantly recognize how to use it. They weaponized the pandemic. It was never about health for them. It was about behavior. It was about the opportunity to impose sweeping restrictions on movement, restrictions on commerce, on speech, on assembly, all under the cover of public health safety. And think about what happened. You had people locked in their homes, willingly, voluntarily, basically, not under threat of terrorism, not under martial law, but under a health directive. You had curfews, mask mandates, business closures, on and on and on. You had people telling on each other, snitching on each other, attacking each other for not complying. Well, that's gold for the OCGFC. That's textbook behavioral conditioning. You had that society where every moment was being spent online, working remotely, consuming media, buying products, shopping online. You were feeding the whole system that they're transitioning into. Small businesses died, the gig economy took over, Amazon basically became a state, data collection hit unprecedented levels, actual human interaction shrank, and the dependence on your devices skyrocketed. COVID was the bridge. It was a dry run for a new governance model. Now, meanwhile, you push the financialization of everything. Housing becomes an investment vehicle, not a human right, not actually about shelter. Education is dead. Health is a subscription service. The more insecure people become, the more predictable they become. And that's what you want if you're from the OCGFC. And while all this is happening in the US, you're building your new base in the global south. You fund startups in Nairobi, data centers in Ghana, AI labs in India. You build supply chains in Vietnam, establish fintech ecosystems in Latin America and Africa, because that's where your next few decades of growth are going to come from. At the same time, you're preparing the decline of the dollar because that's inevitable. So you support digital currencies, your own private systems, You pressure governments to lay the groundwork for central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. Why? Because that gives you total visibility and total control, every transaction traceable, every participant programmable. And the US just becomes a managed decline, a controlled demolition, like I said. It's useful in some parts, but dangerous in others. But main thing, it's no longer central. So when people say that the pandemic changed the world, they're right. But more specifically, it changed how the world would be controlled, how it would be managed. And the thing is, the public complied. That's what made it so successful. They complied, not through fear of authority, but from a sense of moral duty. That's the brilliance of it. You don't need tanks in the streets. You just needed hashtags. You just needed social pressure. That was the real innovation of what they did during COVID. So if we're imagining what the OCGFC would have said back in 2015, that's it. That's the trajectory that they would have laid out. And that's exactly what we've been living through. It's exactly what's been happening. Like I said, the world that we see today didn't just happen by accident. If you were from the OCGFC 10 years ago, analyzing the US and the global landscape, you would have been making these long-term strategies. You can even walk through the timeline, like I said, to see what I'm talking about. From decoupling capital to geopolitical shifts with Russia and Ukraine, China, and so on. It all fits perfectly into the grand strategy. We're seeing the execution of a plan that's not just playing out as we speak, but a plan that has probably been in the works for more than a decade. Stage one, you can say, accelerating the economic shifts, reorientation of global power from 2015, 2016, and so. The writing was on the wall in 2015, US. The economic structure was deeply flawed, especially after the 2008 crisis. The recovery was weak. The wealth gap was growing wider. And at the same time, you had fast rising markets in India and Southeast Asia and Africa. They were outpacing the US and outpacing Europe in terms of growth. The US economy was still recovering from the 2008 financial collapse. And the growth was largely funded by financial speculation, not by robust manufacturing sectors, not in America, not in Europe. Meanwhile, China's economy continued to expand very rapidly. India's demographic advantage became a clear boon, consumer-wise, and the global south was rising. So by 2016, the OCGFC started to put its capital outside the US, moving investments into rising markets. The world was not going to be dominated by the West anymore. They knew this, and they started decoupling from American financial systems. They started laying the groundwork for a new, more diverse global order, multipolarity, so-called. And you can say stage two was the decoupling from the US and integration in the global south. The US-China trade war was in full throttle. The US was increasingly becoming a protectionist power under Trump. And that wasn't helping their own economy because it wasn't supposed to help their own economy. On the other hand, the global south was increasingly seeing its own potential, not just as consumers, but as producers. By this time, we see a massive increase in foreign investments into countries like Vietnam and India and Indonesia.
Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So after carefully watching this video, I will personally tell you that power does not stay in one place. Sometimes one group rises, sometimes other group take over. What you think is powerful today might be weakness tomorrow, and what you think is weakness today might be the pillar someday. In this particular video you just watched, Sahid Boss is telling us about power, politics, and control. This is the content of his speech. Sahid Boss believes that the fall or crumble of America is in its economy, politics, and moral of life. This wasn't an accident. They want to weaken America and move to the center of power. So you and I knows that this man is right in what he's saying. Everything he said is fact. A couple of weeks or months ago, you and I knows what has been going on in America. SNAP benefits was cut off, workers are being owed, airport was shut down. A lot of things happened in a couple of weeks or months ago. Does this look like a sign that America is rising or crumbling? You and I have the answer to this question. A lot of white people came out to cry out how the cost of living in America is affecting everyone. They cannot be able to afford the rent, the food, and every other thing is expensive. Does this look like America is rising or crumbling when its citizens cannot be able to afford their personal need or daily need? Anyway, guys, these are my opinion. Subscribe to this channel for more quality content like this. Comment your thoughts in the comment section, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.